mentioned Charles Leclerc just a moment ago, and Owain, let's talk about the Monegasque driver who had his Q3 lap time deleted and started alongside his teammate on the fifth row of the grid, ninth and 10th. And we had this weird scenario where Ferrari didn't set a time in Q3, even though both cars found their way out on track. Did their scruffy Q3 with Carlos Sainz in the wall, the lap time for Leclerc deleted, cost them a shot at victory in this race? Because they looked very strong on Friday and the pace looked like it was there for at least a front two row start in qualifying. And I think they could have done some damage from that position in the race. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I've checked the time that Charles Leclerc would, well, yeah, Charles Leclerc would have had he been able to keep it. It was a 1:30.119. That puts him at ahead of Fernando Alonso well, so obviously Alonso would have been dropped down a place. Um, let's assume that I haven't seen the track limits excursion that he incurred, so I don't know how big, if it's just slightly outside the lines or a quite a big cut, but assuming it's a small one and makes functionally no difference, that would put him in seventh. It only really moves them up one row forward on the grid. I think that puts them more in the mix. And given that it was relatively well behaved off the start, they wouldn't have been sort of in the danger zone with regards to getting hit by anyone. Um, but I think you're right. The pace was definitely there, and unfortunately, they just didn't find maybe the way to use it best, given where they did start. I mean, um, Carlos Sainz, that was a bit of a weird, a bit of a weird incident to have in qualifying. But let's assume um, he was up with Charles Leclerc, where with Charles Leclerc would have been. It still, like I say, moves them up to that fourth row of the grid. But I, I don't think being stuck behind, I believe it was Sonoda, for lap after lap, for Charles Leclerc, it just really didn't help. I think maybe. You know what? I don't think they would have done, to be quite honest. I think they were good on Friday and they were okay in qualifying, but they didn't show particularly good pace. Um, the rest of the time, it seems that as they maybe chased the track or something like that, or as they came in with a very good setup for what was going on. But I think the other teams just obviously McLaren being far and above the best team, but Red Bull and Mercedes made big strides over that Friday night, and Ferrari didn't seem to so much. Just given what the performance that they could pull out in qualifying, even with everything going for them. So I think it's one of those weekends. Unfortunately, it's a sort of it's turned on its head really from 12 months ago, where they convincingly won this race over a Red Bull that didn't seem too great. And again, the Red Bull didn't seem amazing, but the Ferrari just didn't really look anywhere close to being competitive, and I think that's maybe shows just how topsy-turvy it's been. Um, yeah, I mean it was strong pace at the end of the race, but apart from that, I think the damage was done far earlier in the weekend and far earlier in the race.
Yeah, I mean, well, it surprised me that Ferrari weren't quicker than they were because they tend to go very well around street circuits. Obviously, they were very strong in Singapore last year, claiming the only non-Red Bull victory. Obviously, won Monaco earlier this year with Charles Leclerc and was strong last time out in Baku. So I would have tipped them to be probably the closest contender to McLaren, not Red Bull or Mercedes. Christian, let's come back to you and